Hi there, fishing fanatics. I This is my second time recording this video. First time through, the audio was muted for the microphone, so that's unfortunate. Anyway, I'm going to prevail on this and move beyond it. So, the reason I'm making this video today is to talk about some of the clear water methods I've been using to catch fish. Not only is this a fishing report, but it's also a tutorial. Um, the fishing report being that I'm guiding on Canyon Lake here in Central Texas, guiding on several of the other lakes, and I try to put out credible information so that people can find me, and it legitimizes my business from that aspect. So, what am I doing during the summertime? What's the difference between someone who goes out and fishes down the bank and someone who looks at things from the 10,000-foot view and reviews mapping, different charts, Google Earth, all these things? The difference is that a pro is going to try to find the biggest fish in the lake, for whether it be tournaments, guiding, what have you. And those fish are very specific in their orientation to certain cover and structure on the lake, especially in the summertime. We all know how easy it can be to catch a great big fish during the springtime when they're bedding and they're on their nest, because they are accessible via shallow flats. But everybody thinks that these big fish disappear in the summertime, and that's just not true. Um, let's talk and let's start by looking at Google Earth. So I have it pulled up here. Once again, this is Canyon Lake in New Braunfels, Texas. And if I look at this mapping, the first thing I want to point out is here's the dam. This is the riverside here, Guadalupe River. And this little orange insignia here marks the boat ramp that I normally use to launch out of this creek here, this major creek arm. And what I normally do, or at least during this time for my clients, is I'll launch out of here, and one of the first places that I'll hit is this arced structure here. And what is it about this arc that's so attractive to me? Well, this mark is actually the result. It's resultant of the river channel swinging up to it, and it's a cut bank. It's the outside bend of a creek river channel. Creek channel. Creek or river channel, excuse me. And so what that does is it's deeper water cut in close to the bank. And so if we remember where this is visually here, and we look Navionics, we can go to our chart viewer here, which is a free service provided by Navionics, and we just go to look at Canyon Lake here. So that arc is right here, guys. And the significance of that is you could see where I had talked about the river channel. So this is the original creek channel that's running from the dam here, all the way up, all the way over, back into here. And so what I do during these either warm months or cool months is I look for areas where there's shallow water close to deep water access. Excuse me. The main reason for doing something like that is in the summertime, the cooler water is closer to the bottom. In the wintertime, the warmer water is closer to the bottom. So with it being summertime, the cooler water is going to be deeper. And so all these areas where the channel touches, for example, the creek channel swings in here on this corner. The creek channel also swings in next to this island. It swings in next to this point. Right? So there's many different places. If you look here, off of this main river channel, you have a secondary creek channel that's running through here, and they converge on this point. Could be a great area. Nonetheless, I'm looking for those areas with deep, clear water access in the summertime. So, how am I going to fish these areas? When I get up to something like this and I see that there is ledges because really this is one big ledge. You have a whole bunch of flat water here that drops off pretty sheer into what looks like almost 100 foot of water here. The water's high right now, so it could be more than that. But those are the areas where I'm going to throw baits like a Carolina rig. I'm going to throw a swim bait, because the way that I envision these fish is I have some surface, some flat surface, and then it drops off abruptly, right? So you have a ledge that's dropping off into that creek channel. Well, I do feel like during the summertime, that edge that's formed, I feel like the fish cruise along that edge, and they meander around little shelves, points, things that drop off into that deeper water. And so, does it make sense to fish on top of the ledge? Generally not. Are there fish there sometimes? Yes. But I do feel like the bigger fish are just off the structure. And so if they're suspended, meaning they're positioned in the water column off of that main piece of structure along the edge, if they're suspended, what would be the best way to catch them? Well, there's multiple ways to think about it. So one of the first ways is, let's say that you're throwing a crankbait. You throw that crankbait out, you're working it. Now, most crankbait fishermen will tell you that your bait needs to make contact with the bottom. It needs to make deflections, which trigger bites. That's very true. But also, if you have a group of fish that's positioned suspended, and you throw out that crankbait and you reel it in, that crankbait naturally takes an arc. And when that crankbait gets to the bottom of the arc and swings back up towards the boat, there's a J that's formed. And when that movement takes place, it's a sharp, abrupt change in direction, just like the change of direction that we get on the bottom when the crankbait's moving. So that's one way to trigger suspended fish. It would be ideal and better in low light conditions to do that. Now, my favorite techniques would be either the swim bait or the Carolina rig. Why? The swim bait I could throw out, boo, I could count it down, and what I mean by that is if I throw it out into water that's 20 foot deep, and I count 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, till I feel it hit the bottom. I'll throw out the bait and say I want to keep it in 5 foot. I'll count down however many Mississippi it takes to get down to that 5 foot, and that's when I'll start railing at a continuous speed. So let's say that the fish are at 10 foot. I'll throw out that swim bait, count it down to that 10 foot point, and swim it. So it stays in front of their face along that entire edge, that ledge edge. It stays in front of their face along that entire thing. Now, in my experience on clear water lakes, if there's no wind and it's flat, but you're fishing clear water with the swim bait, a lot of times the fish will follow it. Big groups will follow that swim bait out of curiosity, and you may not get strikes. But when there's a little bit of wind and the food chain is activated, it prompts these fish to bite more. So the ideal situation for that swim bait, clear, hot day, some wind. Those fish should be suspended with the heat. They should be condensed into a group that's easily identifiable. You throw on the edge of that ledge, reel it at that set depth, and hold on. Now, Carolina rig, my absolute favorite bait for throwing on ledges. Why? Because I use a super long leader, about 4 or 5 foot. Longer the leader, the better. There's a certain point at which you try to cast it with a long leader and it's not super effective because that weight slides away from the swivel and it makes it difficult to cast. It's kind of hard to explain other than it just doesn't work all the time. So what I do instead is I scale down to maybe a 3 or 4 foot leader. I play with it, but I want the longest leader I can get away with casting. Now, if it's super long, what you could do is you could do like a figure 8 cast, kind of almost like a fly fisherman would, but it maintains the momentum in the cast the whole time so that weight stays tight to that swivel and it's easier to get out there. But what I like to do is, even in these super deep areas, I like to maybe use 12, 15-pound test if I have to, but just enough line strength to where I can keep that small line diameter, and it's better in clear water. So I'll do about a 3/8 ounce weight, throw it out there, boom, hits the water surface, and that's going to take a good while to get down. Then couple that with the long leader, and you've got that bait just kind of gliding down, staying in front of the fish's face. That is the name of the game with suspended fish, stay in front of their face. And so I throw out that long Carolina rig, boom. There's two baits that I throw on the Carolina rig, okay? I throw a Zoom Fluke, it's the super salty fluke, or I throw the Berkley Power Worm. Now, if I feel like the fish are more keyed in on like a bluegill, or a craw or something like that, that green pumpkin type color of forage, I'll throw that Power Worm. If I think that they're feeding specifically on bait fish, I'll throw that Zoom Fluke. Okay. Now with that Zoom Fluke, let's go ahead and pull up this Tackle Warehouse here, and I'm going to show you what I do to trigger specifically bigger fish. So we'll just type in Zoom Magnum Fluke, okay? This is the bigger of the two flukes, and this is a big boy. This is the Super Fluke here. It didn't look like they had the Magnum Fluke. So this is your standard Super Fluke. While we're here, we'll talk about it. The length here, they're saying is 5.25 inches. They do talk about the Magnum Fluke here, which is 7 inches. Okay, so that's a pretty substantial difference in length, but just bumping up that size seems to trigger those bigger fish and makes a huge difference. So if you've got a limit of fish in the boat and you're going for that big fish and you know they're keyed in on bait fish, throw out that Magnum Fluke and give yourself an opportunity to weed out some of the little ones. Now, what do I throw as far as colors? Okay, so if you look down, 66 colors, there's a lot of them. I like this albino color a lot for clear water and stained water. It's got kind of a purplish hue on the back with a pearlescent underside. That's a great color. Bait fish is a good one. All these colors that I'm showing you are natural tones. This 420, I would throw more in a stained water, right? Let's see here. Green albino, that's a good color. Another very neutral, almost translucent type color scheme there. Smoking shad. This is an excellent one. There's a guy who I watch on YouTube that is specific to trophy hunting in California. He throws smoking shad a lot on Clear Lake, which is a great clear water color. Okay, it's got just the right amount of contrast to catch the eye of the fish, but it doesn't stand out too much to where it looks unnatural. So I'll throw, the albino shad, the smoking shad. As far as the Carolina rig with the Berkley Power Worm, I throw pretty much just a couple colors. For the clear water, I throw one color, okay? So if you look at the 7-inch Power Worm, which is the color I like, or the size I like, excuse me, I throw it in green pumpkin. Super, super easy. Why make it complicated? Of course, you could throw it in like a watermelon color, which is a lot lighter. But in my, here's watermelon red, here's watermelon. But in my experience, throwing that green pumpkin, because of the darkness in that color pattern, you can get away with throwing it in low light conditions as well as high sun conditions. It's got enough things going on to where it's bold enough to where you can get away with it in two different water conditions, if that makes sense. So those are the two baits, really, that swim bait and the Carolina rig that I throw. Remember, I throw it on the 3/8 ounce. As long as a leader is possible. That is a huge, huge, huge detail. If I throw a Carolina rig on a short leader, what happens is when I pitch that weight out with that whole rig, the weight moves and the bait moves. Super responsive. I want that weight to go out, go down, and then I want there to be a substantial delay between the time that the bait travels so that it's really lazy and it's kind of getting collected by the wave action and drifting down very slowly. So it forces that fish to make a decision. It forces that fish to strike when they're suspended, their feeding window is condensed, and it puts it right in front of their face. Makes it very hard for them to resist. Um, like I said, we want to look at those channel swings, okay? Where does the original creek channel, touch the point? Super important. With that power worm, just in the same way that you could upgrade the size of the fluke to the Magnum fluke from the standard size, you can also go to a 10-inch power worm, right? And that's going to be huge. Here's the 10-inch power worm. Okay, so you can use bigger baits to weed out smaller fish if you're in a situation where you've got a bag of fish and you're trying to upgrade. Throw out that larger version, same color scheme, same pattern, same area, but you're just beefing it up a little bit and weeding out those little ones. So I think that gives a pretty comprehensive evaluation of how I would fish these areas, what I would do in the summertime. It's you can't get discouraged if you go to one or two areas that you've seen on the map that have the deep water close to the shallow water. You can't get discouraged if you're not catching them. All it takes is one bite. You get that one bite, and you can go. For example, you get that one bite on a stretch. Let me just go back here. So let's say that you get bit in this corner over here, for example. What I would do is I would fish that area where I got bit, but I would slowly move left or slowly move right. I may move 100 yards left, make a series of casts. If I don't get bit there, I'll go the other direction, make a series of casts. If I get bit there, then I know, hey, I'm creating a range of an area where the fish are grouped up and they're concentrated. Now, does that mean that that's the only place that they are? No, but there could be a specific reason. Okay, so if I get bit within this area here in this area, that's telling me, hey, they're on the far outside bend of the creek channel, the closest to that creek channel as possible. Here it spreads out a little bit. It's not as close, right? But here it's very predominant and extremely close, right? Here it's spread out, boom, boom. So those are little details you have to look at. I use those bites to key in and give me information about where other fish might be, and I play off of that slowly, searching around, kind of just feeling around until I map it out a little bit more clear and I'm able to catch more fish. So I really hope that helps. That key piece of information about shallow to deep is huge for clear water big fish. And I recommend watching this once or twice, just kind of refamiliarizing yourself with some of the key points I made and understanding that those fish follow that edge. That was a key piece of information. A lot of people want to fish up here, and when they pull it off into deep water, they reel in, right? But what they're not realizing is a lot of the big ones stay on this edge. They just follow this edge back and forth, and they patrol that edge looking for bait fish or, bluegills or whatever it is that's been wiped off that top portion. So those are just some of the things. I really hope that that gives you some insight and some input and prepares you for your next fishing trip. If you have any questions, give me a shout. I'm really working hard this year to put out good quality content and working to grow my channel and my client base. So like I said, any questions, hit me up, and good luck fishing.